So how are you, and what kind of artist are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I am a multidisciplinary artist. So I was trained in a pretty traditional school. So very traditional drawing, painting, printmaking, and sculpture, all of those things. And then my personal work has really started to focus more on ceramics. So I make a lot of ceramic sculpture. Um, I'm really focused on nature-inspired abstract ceramic forms. So like this is one of my older pieces here, but just like very intuitively made. So I usually go out in nature, whether on a hike or just sitting, maybe doing a like study of something, and then I'll kind of take that experience back into the studio with me and be like meditating and thinking about it while I work. And then everything I really don't have a plan before I start. I just kind of start with one piece of clay and then intuitively build it. And then more recently, I've begun to make more functional ceramics.
Hmm.
So pieces, it started just with like cups and bowls and things like that. And then it started to become more to this pierced work here, which I have. So it's
Oh.
functional technically, but it has all of these like kind of back to this form, I think. I'm really
Hmm.
interested in forms that are interconnected and like cut out. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been focusing on recently.
Nice, very, very nice, and very nice, like sculptures, and they are really like they have this kind of very original like shape, so they're very nice and interesting. And
Thank you.
okay, so I know you are in USA, in Philadelphia based, and how's going there with this like situation, and if you are still working and creating, of course.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I am lucky enough to have like my own apartment and feel pretty safe here in Philadelphia. And I'm able to kind of get out and go into parks sometimes. Like there's a decent amount of nature, so that's important to me.
Hmm.
Um, and work stopped. So I work with a nonprofit organization as an after school art teacher.
Hmm.
And so, of course, all the schools are shut down. And then I do a lot of gig work. So everything pretty much stopped, but I've started to switch to online teaching. So through a couple different platforms, I've gotten connected. And I've actually really been enjoying that. So instead of working with middle school students, now mostly it's adults, which is very nice. Nice change. And I'm doing really like basic classes, like beginner. And so it's just nice to kind of see people excited about trying something new that they haven't done before and get creative. So I do like very meditative kind of watercolors and just, simple. And so that's been a great way to kind of focus my energy. And it's only about 3 or 4 times a week, but that's been really rewarding.
Yes, of
So a
course.
little bit of work. Yeah.
Of course. And um, does this situation like um, influenced a little bit your art, or like the
Yeah.
way you think?
Yeah. So with my studio, I'm in a group ceramic studio, and that, of course, was closed down. So the first 2 weeks it was open, and I just like was there all day, every day, and it felt really good. And now it's closed. So I made a couple forms that I could take home. So this is one of them. And I
Ah,
decided to, I don't know if you can see the detail here, but
yes.
I decided to not like carve
Ah,
into it and do a relief instead of piercing it, because this isn't fired yet. And so when the piece isn't fired, it's very, very delicate.
uh-huh.
So I've kind of transitioned and had to think differently about getting the amount of detail that I want, but not kind of going all the way and carving it out. So it's kind of changed the way that I'm working in that sense. And then it's also I think I'm thinking with all of my work, I'm thinking about interconnection and how people are connected to each other and connected to the earth, and how the earth is, it's all just kind of one and
Mm-hmm.
the same. And so I think this moment in time, a lot more people are thinking about that, and we're all kind of thinking about the collective and how we can protect each other, or how this virus is spreading. So that, not that it's really changed the way that it looks necessarily in the themes that I'm using, but I think I'm just thinking about that a little bit more. And I think that's going to be influencing my work for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So in any case, you are still active in your fields, like both teaching and creating some artworks. But I'd just like to know how did you start to use like clay, and how did you start creating this kind of sculptures?
hmm I have memories from being a little girl and going to the creek that was near my house, and just kind of, there was natural clay in the creek bed. And I just remember one day like discovering that that was a thing that I could start molding. And I spent all afternoon by the riverbed, and I made this like little figure that carried a basket of plants. And I must have been 8, 9. And then, throughout um, middle school and high school, I had some ceramics classes, and I really connected with it. And it's just something that I keep going back to. Like it's the medium that I feel most comfortable and the most just inspired. It's so open. There's
Mhm.
endless possibilities with it, and it just kind of fits with my process and my way of thinking. And especially right now, actually, I've started experiment with processing my own clay again. So
Ah,
that's another thing that I've kind of touched on throughout from that moment of like digging the clay out of the creek as a little girl. A few times now I've started, going to different creek beds and digging. And I've actually, I went to Georgia a few months ago, and they have really beautiful, like bright red clay there. And so I emptied my suitcase and just had a backpack full of like 25 pounds of clay. People were, what is this?
nice.
Um, but yeah, so I've started kind of thinking, yeah, I've started thinking about how we can kind of take from the earth and use these old materials. I mean, pottery is one of the oldest art forms that we have evidence of. And so kind of going back and not just buying the clay, but actually taking it from the ground and experiencing what it's like to process it, and then use that for my sculptures. So that's been just another part of the process that feels really rewarding to me, and is something I definitely want to experiment more with, and digging pigments from crushed rocks, things
Uh-huh.
like that. So just becoming more nature focused. And I kind of forget what you were asking, why I'm talking about this. Um, so I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely. No, but it's fine. It's fine. I like when people are talking a lot and they are like explaining their own way of thinking or their own artwork. So I really like it. Don't worry.
Okay, sorry.
And I'd like to know your opinion on how you imagine art, or in general the art system after this pandemic situation, and how do you think it will be?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question. I mean, right before, so I'm just getting started in my career, and so I don't really know what the art world is really like. I've done a few gallery shows, and I was just starting to do a lot of craft fairs and fine art fairs.
Uh-huh.
So that is kind of the avenue that I was beginning to go down for the past year about. And so that's kind of what I can speak to. So in terms of that, it's kind of scary. I mean, all of these fairs and people, that's where people are gathering, and it's this whole community event where people are coming to a place and looking at potentially hundreds of artists, and getting excited and being able to really connect directly with the artist, which I think is really important for people, and seeing and touching and feeling the art. And so it makes me a little bit nervous to, even just for the near future, obviously those events are canceled. But it makes me wonder if even a year or two from now, how people will feel being in crowds, how they'll react to wanting to go out to a place where they know
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of people. And so, yeah, that, I mean, on one hand, I think once this is over, people will just be really excited to be out again. But then another part of me just wonders, if they're going to want to invest in that way. And in terms of just like the art world and the gallery scene, I mean, that's already been a slowly dying over the past many years, unfortunately. So hope is that people will still see the value in art and just start to be more excited about buying art directly from the artists. And I see a lot of people, of course, online, marketing themselves really well. And I think that's been happening, and I think that's going to get pushed a little bit more towards that.
Of course.
But I also, that makes me sad again, because like seeing art in person is so important. So I go back and forth on how I feel about it. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I guess out of all of this, people will just realize how important the arts are. I mean, even from the teaching I've been doing online, I have, maybe 20 people in a class, and every class there's new people, and they, I always ask, what's your experience with drawing? What's your experience with watercolor? And 9 out of 10 people say, I've never painted before, or I have since, elementary school, and they're 60 years old. So I think and hope people are realizing how important art is, not only to create for themselves, but to have in their lives and appreciate.
yeah, of course, of course. Okay, and last question, I swear. Uh, but do you think that, like, yes, when everything will be over and past, do you think that your art will be like a bit changed, or if you are a little bit mentally changed?
Yeah. I'm very slow to change. I think like I have, the form, like I can look back into my, doodles from, or sketchbooks from middle school, and I'm working with really similar motifs. So I think I process things really slowly. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's kind of a slow transformation that I'm going to look back in maybe 5 or even 10 years and say like, okay, I see how my art was affected. I
Mhm.
see how I was thinking differently. But realistically, that change is going to come really like slowly or organically. And I don't expect to see a huge immediate like tangible change in my artwork. Um, but I do think that just in terms of appreciating the time and space
Mhm.
that I got to create during this time, and then appreciating the spaces, like my studio, which I don't have access to, just being more appreciative of having that, and yeah, just being able to create, and being thankful that I get to do that, and I get to be a creative person. Um,
Ah, yeah.
so yeah, and I again just like thinking about interconnection, and how we can reach out to other people, and really make a change in other people's life. I think that theme is gonna continue, and maybe even more so, kind of bringing that human component
Mhm.
into it is gonna be influencing my work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.